Okay, welcome guys to 7 effective ways to achieve your goals. First and foremost, I wanted to say welcome and very, very excited about this session, more so because I've discovered over the phase of my career and helping start successful startups myself, but also helping 400 other people start their businesses that it's always been a huge help when we always start off our sessions or always start an intention with some goals. And I'm just going to qualify what goals are and what they are not. So I'm just going to kick into that. But yeah, very, very excited about this. It's one of the pillars of the three-piece series that I'll be running just around helping people clarify their business structure. So let's kick in. Okay, so first and foremost, I'd like to talk about this element of being politically incorrect. I always encourage anyone that has a startup to always be in a situation where they can be as honest as possible. And I use this slide also just to remind myself and others that a lot of my content is very much centered around my personal experiences and the experiences of the people that I've coached from my personal business, and of course from people I've coached in one-on-one sessions. So a lot of that experience comes from there. It's usually practical advice. It's usually applicable advice, and I tend to try and stay away from people pleasing because I find that in some cases it doesn't matter what idea or passion you have. You're gonna get some winners on board, but sometimes you're not gonna get anyone at all. So it's good just to stay on your course and on your truth. Okay, so it all boils down to intention. So I have a big intention, obviously, for today's webinar, but I wanted you to also, whoever's logged in right now, to just sit back and think about, when you saw the title, 7 effective ways to achieving goals, what was your intention of logging in? What's your intention for this year? What are you trying to get out of this webinar? Because if you can sort of set up some clear intentions for yourself, you find that this hour will be more valuable to you. So here are just a couple of life intentions that I always start all my webinars and talks with. I find that it's always very important for me, or at least even the people I work with, to always be as honest as possible. And that's one of my goals as well with the content that I share, is that I'll try and be as honest as possible with it. Secondly, is I love to have fun. It's about 9 p.m. Singapore time here. Very, very still passionate about my business. And at the same time, you find that a lot of times when you sort of approach any project or new information with a bit of a childlike or fun-like approach, you find you learn a lot more. Third is being self-interested. Now, this one is a very tricky one for some people. The reason I put that in here as one of my rules or expectations in life is just I find, particularly in my space, obviously I'm a startup consultant. A big part of you being in business is about ensuring that you are as sustainable as possible. And the only way I know how to do that is to ensure that you can move away from this almost over altruistic point of view of trying to serve your customers at any expense, but coming more towards a centered, more balanced approach, which is just giving what we call fair exchange. So that means you over delivering your value, but at the same time, you grow enough confidence or skill sets to be able to ask for the business. So that's part of being self-interested, because if you don't have an element of self-interest, chances are you're not going to be long in business. Number 4 is taking action. Unlike education, formal education or traditional education, which have nothing wrong, or there's nothing wrong about it, or nothing against it, but it basically encourages you to sort of get information, study it, memorize it if you can, maybe apply some critical thinking, but at the same time, you don't always necessarily have to live by what you are learning. Whereas in business, everything boils down to one thing, and that's action. And so what I'm trying to do is not necessarily give you too much information today, but try and make it as simple as possible and as applicable as possible, so as we can try and bridge the gap between theory and application. So I really hope you can try and take action on as much of the information as possible. Number 5 is giving before you receive. Now, this is a very, very important principle. And again, I've action-packed a lot of principles in this webinar. And my goal here as well, like I said, is not just because I'm running a business, but I'm uber passionate about helping entrepreneurs and celebrating entrepreneurship. So a lot of this for me is also about giving back, and I hope for you guys as well. I can't exactly get feedback at this point, but I hope you're basically putting in a little note for yourself for 2017 or whatever year you're in when you watch this, is that, how much can you possibly try and give back to people more this year than you did last year? This is a very, very important question, because at the end of the day, I think it was Einstein that also said that we are happy and feel fulfilled to the degree of how much we're in service to others. So if that holds any truth, then I think that's a very, very good goal to aim for. Give before you receive. Okay, so here's just a little quick activity for you guys to do, and I'm going to give you maybe about 30 seconds to think about this, is why are you here? So just try and write down maybe a couple of points of what you want to get out of today. Is it that you want to be able to have more clarity around what to do in your business? Is it that you want a couple of tips, or maybe to hear something slightly different from what you heard in all the other typical goal setting seminars? Whatever it is, just try and come up with about 3 things that you'd like to get out of today's session based on the topic. Okay, so I hope you wrote down 3 things, and maybe you want to push yourself a little bit more. Try and write down 4 things. What are the 4 things you might want to get out of today? Or maybe any questions that you might want to get answered. I hope I can answer them. If not, again, there'll be an opportunity for some discussions in the Startup Builder Facebook Tribe community, which I'll share some links on for you, or you can email us on that. So what questions may you want answered, and hopefully I can clarify what they are through the session. Just give you a few more seconds. Okay, let's get into it. So what's today about? Today is about these main 4 things. Number 1, what are goals and why are they so important? I wanted to just touch on this because I think in a lot of cases people talked about goal setting, planning, and I've attended seminars, management courses on different things, but at the same time it's very, very, very important to understand what I mean by goals, and also why I think they're important, and why they're also not so important. So I'll go into that. Second is, what are the 7 effective ways of achieving your startup goals? Okay, and I'll talk about this as well. And the third thing is, what is the difference between goals and wishes? Okay, and then the 4th thing is, how do I maintain motivation through the year? Because we've all been there, and I think I talked about it in the extract. It's New Year's now. Everybody's setting goals, and I think there was a statistic that said within 90 days of everyone setting goals in January, about 90% of the population who set those goals are not in line or attending or committing to the parts that they'd promised themselves to do. So why does that happen? And how can you not be part of that statistic? So I'm going to try and touch on that as well if we get time. Okay, so let's get into it from point number 1. What is a goal? Now, I like this image here because it basically describes what I think a goal is. But let me give you the business dictionary definition of a goal. A goal is an observable and measurable end result, having one or more objectives to be achieved within more or less fixed timeframes. Okay, now in the dictionary, it kind of had a couple of dots there, but I myself am the one that put in timeframes, because in my opinion, is and I think one of the big successful motivators spoke about this, and his name is Les Brown. He said, dreams are great, and there's some things everybody should aspire to have, but at the same time, is the only difference between a dream and a goal is a time frame. Because if you don't have a time frame, chances are you're just going to keep putting it off, and it won't happen. So I want to touch on this a little bit, but here's just a couple of 2 questions for you to think about. Number 1, are your ideas measurable? Now, I'm not sure if some of you have attended any of my workshops or talks, or even in the Startup University. I do talk about this in some of my videos, is that I really believe that success is a number. So let me explain what that means. I think that if we go by the old definition that success is a worthy progression of a realized goal or realized dream, there's no way you can feel or know that you're progressive if you can't measure that. So I'll give you an example. People say, yeah, but Aaron, I think not all success is money, and not all success is about numbers. because, if I feel happy, then I'm successful. Of course, I really completely agree with that. But where we're going, and specifically to the talk that we're having today and the webinar that we're doing today, is that if you are looking to get from where you are right now to where you want to be, it is very, very important for you to have some level of measuring stick or yard, so that by the time we get to 6 months, 12 months, 15 months from now, whatever, that you can basically count that unit, if you like, of whatever you picked. And then if it improves, then obviously you are more successful and you're progressing in your goals. And if it decreases, then you need to make adjustments. So the reason why that is so is, I can give you an example. Let's just say most people these days ate too much pudding during Christmas and they are looking to lose a couple of kilos. Now, a couple of kilos is nice, but it's a pointless conversation if you don't know how many kilos you currently are. And then obviously to shed off 2 or 3 or 5 kilos down the track means you have lost 4 kilos. And so that's an example there. So number 2, are they exciting enough to inspire you to achieve them? I think this is also a very, very important point, because a lot of times, particularly in my line of work, I meet people that say, oh, look, Aaron, I'm really frustrated with my job. I hate my boss. I hate my life. I really would love to do what you do and set up a business and, do become my own boss. And I think it's a very worthy goal. And I really admire people that say this. But at the same time, what's really kind of edged in the back of my head is to ask them, are you really excited about getting up early in the morning? I think Richard Branson said, entrepreneurs are the crazy ones because they trade a 60-hour week or whatever it is people work these days for 80 to 120 hours. This is very, very common. So some people may not be very inspired to do that. And I think it's very, very important that if you do set a goal, you have to also really ask yourself questions about that idea, the project, or the startup. Are you going to be excited about achieving it? So if you're not, then chances are you won't have enough fuel in the tank to pursue it consistently. So the second thing is, now let's explore what the 7 areas to achieve goals are. Now, this might be very counter to some of you, because at the end of the day, some people think, well, goals is about taking action. Goals is about setting things on paper and going for it relentlessly until you achieve it. From my experience, and I used to actually subscribe to this, but I found that was very, very much one-sided side of the coin. Because the other part of goals, as you'll find out, is not necessarily in action taking, but it's in some other elements. So let me just share with you what I think these 7 areas are that have really, really helped me. If I look back to maybe say 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I set up a lot of goals, and every year that by, I found myself getting further and further behind. And then about 4 years ago, I started taking different methodologies, or started maybe evaluating different ways of getting to the same truth. And I found these 7 areas really make a difference. So number 1 is, have you got a growth mindset in terms of how to approach your goal? And I'll talk about what that is. Number 2, do you take stock of your previous year and list all your accomplishments from that year? But some of you might say, well, look, I don't know if I achieved much. Chances are you did. You have to really be able to take stock, not just of the bad, but the good as well. Number 3, we need to be brutally honest about where you are now and what you did and what didn't happen. Okay. Number 4 is, list all the habits that you have that are aligned and also not aligned with the goals that you've set. Number 5 is, it's also important, I think, to always set new goals every year. But I find it's a bit of a definition of insanity, I think, by Einstein, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, I have set so many goals, and I won't talk about some of you, but if some of you relate to this, put a little smile in the notes, I guess. But it's like, people tell you, set new goals, set new goals, set new goals. 1 year goes by, you set new goals, another year goes by, set new goals, but you haven't actually achieved them. So I think more than just resetting your goals, which is very important, I think you've got a fresh start every year, is it's also important to set real goals. And I'll talk about the difference of what I mean by real goals. Okay, then number 6 is, what resources are needed for you to be able to achieve your goals. And number 7 is, what are you prepared to give up? Okay, so let's just talk about the first one, which is the growth mindset. Now, I talked about this in some webinars, but I'll just give it to you in one way. a very amazing book called Mindset by a lady called Carol Dweck, and wrote a book called Mindset. And basically, she did a study on not just young people, but people as they grew through school, in terms of which ones were the most adaptable, most likely to succeed, etc., etc. What she found was that people with a fixed mindset, obviously, were people who would maybe come into an environment and they already had this, expectation, if you of themselves, to say, well, it's either I'm good at it or I'm not. There's no in between. Number two is they'll always, basically, when they got frustrated, when they hit a challenge, they'll usually give up. Number three is that they didn't actually like to be challenged. There were people that didn't want to be pushed to their boundaries and wanted to stay within the safe zone. And there was very much a personalized experience of failing. Now, a lot of us have some sort of elements to this, but in a lot of cases, recognition was more about telling people that they're smart rather than having this determined attitude to persevere. So, what is a growth mindset and how does it apply to your goals? I think it's very, very important to have a growth mindset because, number one, when you have a growth mindset, you really want to learn about anything. And it's really very, very important to you to be open to the possibilities around how to achieve something. So, for example, if you set yourself a goal to maybe say, let's just go with $100,000 sales revenue in your startup, you need to be able to say, well, okay, I can learn what it takes to make $100,000 revenue business, and I'm prepared to do what it takes. Now, number two is everybody does experience frustration, which is an emotion. But in a growth mindset, unlike a fixed mindset where you give up every time you're frustrated, in a growth mindset, it's just an opportunity for you to persevere. Number three is that, you when you have a growth mindset around your goals, you basically push yourself and you challenge yourself to do better all the time. And you don't take failure so personally, just to take it as a opportunity to learn. Now, the most important one, I think, which is more related to the goals, is this aspect of basically your attitude. And I think it was Zig Ziglar that says your altitude is dictated by your attitude. And I completely agree with that because in a lot of situations, you find you're going to set some goals, but 2, 3, 4 months down the track, some things are going to move faster, some things are going to move slower. But if you have a very good growth mindset attitude or positive mindset about things, you're going to consistently put in effort, and that's what keeps the motivation. But I'll talk about that. So here's about 5 things for you to think about around the growth mindset regarding your goals, because if you're going to set some goals, these 5 areas are going to be affected. Number one is you definitely need skills, okay, for you to achieve something that you have never achieved so far. Number two is if it's going to be something different, 90% of the time it's going to be outside your comfort zone. So you're going to be faced with some challenges. Number three is if you set some goals, it does require some effort, okay? Because if it didn't require some effort, it would be the same as trying to swim upstream. And if successful is so easy, there'll be more people successful, correct? So there's something that successful people do is they put in a lot more effort around the things that matter. So number four is feedback. Some feedback is useful, some feedback I wouldn't worry about. And I think a growth mindset should be able to discern the two. Number 5 is setbacks. And again, this is a very, very important thing. Is like some people, when they hit a few setbacks, don't achieve the goals. They make major adjustments and basically blame others or get discouraged and quit. Now, if you're going to have a growth mindset, you can see why that's important for your goals. Is that it's going to help you and it's going to be a wake-up call for you to just work harder and make some major adjustments in the right direction. Okay? So, number two is about taking stock. Now, I really think this is one of the most important pillars because it's one thing to set goals and to try and achieve something in the future. And this is counter standard goal setting. Standard goal setting says, set a goal for you to lose 10 kilos, for example, or set a goal for you to have a 6-pack and bums of steel. Now, if you're going to do that and you set a goal for the new year for you to try and achieve something different, but you haven't actually taken stock of what were the goals you might or might not have written down last year to see the progress of how you performed in your previous year, it's very hard for you to basically make some adjustments that are effective in the new year. So I'll give you an example. Number 1 is ask yourself this question when it comes to taking stock. Did you write down any goals last year? They say something really crazy, something like 80% of people never write down their goals, and only 20% of people do. But what was really interesting is by the end of the year or by the end of people's life, they find that 80% of the people that wrote down the goals, so 80% of that 20%, actually went ahead and achieved them. So that's a very, very interesting thing. So what does that mean? That basically means that you have a higher chance of achieving any goal if you've actually started off by writing it down. So the question I have for you here is, did you write down any of your goals last year? And if the answer is yes, then congratulations. I think you're already increasing your probabilities of achievement, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But if the answer is no, the chances are then you didn't set yourself up to at least increase your probabilities, because how can you actually achieve something that you didn't see? So that's just something to think about. And obviously, hopefully, motivate you to write the goals this year. So, number two is, what did you write down? If you did write them down at the beginning of last year, excuse me, and which of those goals did you achieve and which of those goals didn't you? So, I'll just give you a couple of seconds to think about maybe 3 or 4 goals that you might have really wanted to achieve, and then which goals you didn't actually achieve. So, just go ahead and write those down now. Okay. Yeah, good. So you don't have to spend too much time on this. This is just food for thought. You can go back to this later. Number 3 is, which ones were of the highest importance to you? So let's just say you wrote down 3 things that didn't work out and you wrote down 3 things that you did. So looking at the things that didn't work out, which of the ones that didn't work out were of their importance? So for example, maybe one of them was you really wanted a promotion at the end of last year, but you didn't get it. Okay. And that was very important to you because it affected everything else, financial, etc., etc. So you need to write that down and identify with it, because once you take stock, then you can take the next step. Number 4, what stopped you achieving them? So if it was, for example, the same one about having a promotion that you didn't get, maybe one of the reasons you didn't achieve it is because your boss passed you and gave the promotion to somebody else, or maybe the promotion was no longer available, or maybe you did get some constructive feedback, like you just didn't have the right skills. Okay, so it's just very important for you to write that and be very, very honest about it. Okay, and number 3, sorry, and this is obviously the next step, is now we can start evaluating the facts, because a lot of times when people I talk to about goal setting, they say, oh, yeah, no, last year didn't work out, it was a very bad year. I say, why? Oh, well, things didn't work out for me. Okay, what didn't work out for you? Oh, this and that. It's a very, very vague, very diluted way of looking at life. And I really strongly encourage you, if you can, to start looking at your life a little bit more scientifically. Start looking at, like I said, a stock take of all the things that you achieved and all the things that you didn't. Because once you do that, you can then start looking at the facts and then stop looking at falsehoods and lies and just deceptions or fibs or stories that you've created. So here's a couple of things I find that people make a mistake on goal setting in general. Number 1 is they never write things down. Like I said, 80% of success that you will achieve, it makes sense to write it down, because it's like you're trying to go on Google Maps and then Google asks you, where do you want to go? You can go anywhere is okay. Chances are you're not going to find the location. You need to write it down. Number 2 is, most people either have too many or not enough goals. Now, usually, if I take a bunch on this, I'd say most people fall into the too many goals and then basically get themselves confused. Number 4 is they're too big. Some of them are like, I want to make $1 million in 1 year. Now, is that possible? Yeah, I've heard of success stories of people that win the lotto that can do that. But the reality is that it makes sense to be a little bit more practical now, not necessarily realistic, and I'll talk about the difference. Okay, and then number 4 is, it's not specific enough. So some people would say things like, next year or this year, I just want to be happier. Now, happier, again, is not a number. So again, why I believe success is a number. It's very, very important for you to be specific. And I think the more specific you are closer to a figure, the more likely it is that you can look at that figure constantly and look at ways of improving. So here's a couple of things that you could ask yourself. Number 1, if you could change, and these are very jaw-breaking questions. In fact, I wasn't sure whether I should put this in. I usually run this type of questions in a mastermind group, but I feel it was very useful because this is something that is well connected to how people end up accumulating um, you know, accumulating a life where there's not a lot of things that are actually happening in their favor. So here's a couple of things I want you to ask yourself and write them down because these are very, very important questions. And I'll explain to you why in a second. So number one question is, if you could change places with any other person, who would it be and why? Just think about that. Other people you see on TV, other people that maybe you've talked to or you've seen your neighbor turn down on just by observation, and you think, wow, those guys are doing really, really well. I'd not like to take their place or, you know, have a girlfriend like they do or a boyfriend like they do or whatever, seem to be happy like they are. You know, not necessarily whether it's true or not, but those are just some people like that you like to change places with. Number two, if you could choose a worthwhile job, practice, or vocation, would it be the one you're currently doing now? That's a very interesting question because some of us now are in businesses, some are looking to get into business, others are in jobs, and maybe things aren't just working out. So it's just a very worthy question to ask yourself that if it's not worthwhile, you know, why is it that you're still doing something that isn't? There's something to think about. Number three, if you could move to any country in the world to live, would that require you moving out of your current house? Okay. Number four, if you could relive your life again from age 12, what would you do it? Okay. So the reason I'm posing these very interesting but challenging questions to you is that in a lot of cases, if you answered that you could or wanted to change places with somebody else, it basically highlights the reality that you're not happy with where you are. Okay, same with the vocation. But if you could answer the question that you are happy with the way you are, with who you are, sorry, and happy with the type of career that you've chosen, at the same time that you would live in the same house because this is the country that you've chosen to live in, and that you just take life as it is because you never want to go back to being 12, then chances are your life and your goals are pretty well aligned. But if you answered no or negatively to any of those questions, chances are goal setting is very, very important, but there must be some areas that you need to improve on. So let's look at how we can basically best help change some of those things. Okay, so the first one in this area is habit. A lot of times I have found, in fact, I think if I look back to all the goal setting seminars I've attended, and maybe I could be wrong on this, but the ones that I tended to really focused on selling you the prospect of possibility thinking, positive, optimistic thinking, glasses half full kind of concept, you know, walk on fire type of thing. Now, those are very, very important, and I think it's a very important thing for you to change, that you need to think optimistically. So that's not what I'm taking away from. But what I found was a missing gap is it never allowed us in those situations, or maybe I wasn't just aware of myself back in those days. I mean, I was a really self-conscious, very low confident person, believe it or not. So maybe I just didn't hear it. But I find that if you don't actually also start observing your habits and see what habits are necessary for you to achieve certain things, it's almost impossible for you to achieve them. And this was like a sledgehammer moment when it really hit me because I was sitting down with a coach not too long ago, I think about 4 years actually. And we set down a couple of goals and we talked about a few things. And then he says, okay, Aaron, now at that time, I was drinking a lot. I was partying a lot. I think I was sleeping very little. I still sleep very little. But one thing that he said is like, okay, listen, who would you like to be like? I said, oh, look, I'd like to be like Richard Branson. I really loved his book. I read it, Losing Your Virginity, etc., like we all have, right? And then he said, okay, so if we take away Richard Branson's achievement and just look at a day in Richard Branson's life, now you can actually Google that on YouTube. I found that very interesting. What habits do you think he has that has allowed him to deserve the life that he has? That was a very, very, very big question. And so one of the questions I would like to ask you also to think about is, what are your daily habits? So let's just say, for example, that you want a business that is successful or a startup that is financially successful and you have, let's just say, 10 new clients. Chances are you need to look at your habits. Are you waking up at the right time? Are you researching enough about what those clients' needs are? Don't forget, business is about solving problems. So Do you have the habits that are reflected on the person you need to become daily for you to attract the success you want tomorrow? That's a very important question because I find it's a very nice and dandy to set some goals. But if you don't have daily habits that are going to ensure that you progressively realize those goals, chances are it's really never going to happen. So, number two is list down all the good and the bad habits you have that you think encouraged or hindered your goals from last year. So, this question now is more about looking at the previous goals. We haven't got into the new goals, setting for the new year and et cetera, et cetera. We're still looking at the old goals. What are those goals? If you look at the top three goals that you achieved, what habits did you have on a daily basis that helped you and ensured that you achieved that? You find it's pretty on the money to find that. Let's just say if you had losing weight or getting more fit, you had to go to the gym at least twice a week. If you went to the gym more times than not, twice a week, chances are you'd have a fitter body. But on the other hand, if you ended up partying, drinking too much, eating too much of the wrong food every day, and didn't do the exercise or go to the gym, chances are that at the end of the year, you would have it. Pretty straightforward, right? So in a lot of cases, I find a lot of people don't teach this enough, but I find this is one of the biggest centerpieces is your daily habits will dictate that. So let's look at it now also in the negative. Out of those three or four or five things that you really wanted to achieve that you didn't, maybe now think about what are the daily habits that you had that stopped you doing the habits that you should have been doing that could have had given you the result that you wanted in 2016 or whatever year it was the previous year when you're listening to this. Very, very important question. Okay. So number three, based on the goals that you want this year now. So now we're looking at things that you may want to have. You may not have written them down. We'll have some time to do that later a little bit. But think about the new goals. Or maybe they could be the reverse of the goals that you wanted to achieve last year. Okay. What habits do you still currently have? Is it, for example, something even as simple as you just don't get up out of bed in time? You're always late. So you never get a chance to get up early enough to meditate, go do yoga, run, plan the day. So you're always chasing your tail. Think about that because it's those same habits that we need to address. And unless they change, nothing's going to change. So number four, which habits are the most difficult to break? Now, for some people, I was talking to a friend of mine, he's been smoking for about 24 years, and he set the goal to stop smoking this year. Now, hats off, I think it's a very worthy thing to do, but at the same time, I know it's also going to be a very difficult thing to do if he's just thinking of quitting rather than thinking of replacing. And I'll talk about that in a second. So just think about it for yourself. Which of those goals have you maybe been writing down for the last couple of years and haven't achieved it? But now you have an opportunity where you can look at the habits that you've been doing for the last couple of years that have stopped you doing it and then see how can we best address those and break them. But I think the best way to do that is find a reward that you should have for you to break them. And it doesn't have to be a reward like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight and I've always been trying to lose weight, so my reward is losing weight. Trust me, if that was a good enough reward for you that you were passionate about, you would have lost weight by now. You need to find something else. Maybe it could be like, okay, when I lose 5 kilos, I'm going to eat a cupcake. Now, as much as that's counterproductive in some situations, some people would say, I would say some people are more motivated to hold off on eating that cupcake and lose 2 kilos in the sake of only gaining 20 grams more, So anyway, silly example, but you get my point. But here's something that may help you as well. This is a habit formation. And like I talked about them before, the routines are the biggest factor. So number one is, you need to think about things like what are reminders you can put in place to stop you breaking habits. So let's just say one of the bad habits you have is you're always going to the fridge and eating cake. So one thing you can do for yourself there is chew in a little reminder to maybe eat more regularly and eat healthier food. So you set it up in your phone and you eat more regular food, for example. But number two is you need to set up the habit. So as much as you can set up the alarm on your phone, you need to basically have your house in order, for example, and then have preset meals so that you get into the habit of having little meals through the day. And once you do that and start taking action on it, it's going to cue up the reminder and the routine, and you just get stronger to reinforce that habit. But the third part, which is the most important, and this is the part a lot of people are talking about, don't do and aren't clear enough about, is most of us have a higher percentage of changing a habit if there is a reward attached by getting this new habit. Now, most people say, or scientists or neuroscientists, I think, say something like 90 days it takes to break a habit. So chances are you need to be reminding yourself and having a routine for the next 90 days for you to break the habit. But upon breaking that habit, you need to reward yourself. And the reward in itself shouldn't be, for example, this thing about weight loss. It should be something you would have to go out of your way to reward yourself so that it really concretes in your mind that it was a reward. Okay, so now let's talk about real goals. And I have a little bit of a dig here about this, and this might challenge some of you. I know we've all been to management seminars, and people talk about setting real goals, which are realistic, achievable, timely. SMART goals. Sorry, that was it. Like SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Now, I have a dig with some of that. Not that it doesn't work. It's just that's been going around for a while, and I think it works for some people. But here's the challenge: in the SMART goals, there is the R, which is SMART. Now, R stands for realistic. I particularly believe this because in the startup world, particularly, we are taking an idea that does not exist. Okay, think about how crazy that sounds. You're all mad, by the way. We're all mad. You take an idea that doesn't exist. You know, I know that society generally condemns, criticizes, blames, fights, resists anything that's new, right? So you're going to take this crazy little baby idea that you have, launch it into the marketplace, fully well knowing that most people are not going to accept the idea because if it's new, revolutionary, challenging, the status quo, you're just going to be faced with the system. So the reality is people like, for example, the Wright brothers, who took tons of metal folded up into like a circular tube, decided to fly that metal across the ocean. Think about how unrealistic that was at that time. At that time, there were no airplanes. Okay. But aren't we grateful that the Wright brothers persevered and did not believe in realistic? Think about how unrealistic it is for us to flick a switch on the wall and then electricity comes out of a light bulb. You know, aren't we happy that Thomas Edison didn't give up after 10,000 hours of times for the light bulb to work? So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that you've got to take some of these smart strategies in as a grain of salt because sometimes reality is the enemy. So when I say real goals here, I'm actually not talking about the fact that you need to look around your environments for them to be real. I'm talking about the fact that you need to be real with yourself. Because it's one thing to set a goal to have $100,000. Okay, and I think everybody should, and it's very, very important. If you're running a business, you should aim to be a millionaire. I really, really believe every single person who is crazy enough to start a startup can and should set a goal to be a millionaire. Why? It's because of what it will do about you and your character and the person you become in the pursuit of that. But more importantly, what I mean by setting real goals is that if you do not have enough self-confidence in yourself or never even fathomed the reality that you can achieve something that big, it could almost become a negative. So you need to become brutally honest, like I said in step 2, about where you are and who you are, okay? And in terms of the personality and the type of person you are, and then you set real goals around that. So here's a couple of things that I think are very good, broad areas. And when I do my one-on-one sessions, I actually drill down into 11 pillars where people should set their goals. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email and we can talk about that. But basically, here's 9. 1 is artistic. This is just something like a creative outlet. It's good to set some goals around that. Number 2 is attitude. 3 is career, vocation, or business in our case. 4 is education. And when I say education, I'm not necessarily talking about getting a qualification. Education here for me is about professional and personal development. What can you learn more that can help you become more efficient, deliver a better quality service, and at the same time, be just more excellent and have more know-how in your industry. Number 5, set some family goals. Could be your own family or family with others. Number 6 is financial Last time I checked, money affects everything these days. So really good to have a healthy financial goal and also have a healthy financial relationship with money. Next one is physical. We cannot build a business plan without no health. I actually purposely set up a startup company around juice cleansing because I realized just how much energy was being used in business, but also how much eating junk food and things like that didn't help the business, help the entrepreneurs. So I set up a business that's doing really, really well. But physical is a very important part. Next is pleasure. These are, I think, Tony Robbins talks about them being just gift goals or thing goals. Doesn't matter. Whatever gives you pleasure. Could be car just because you want to go for it. Next is public service or community service or social enterprise. This is just giving back where you can. Okay. So think about those goals and see if you can set some things around that. But here's how you can successfully set goals. I think when you have those 9 areas as a starting point for goals, look in there and try and set up some things with the end in mind. So this is a long range goal. Yes, I want to make $1 million one day. Great. $1 million is a long range goal, and that's between 1 to 5 years. Okay. Next is intermediate goals. Okay, well, for me to get to $1 million in the next 5 years, whatever year this is now, times five, makes sense to divide that goal of $1 million by five. And let's just say you get something in the vicinity of $175,000. Okay, so you need to probably start working towards $500,000 in the next 3 years. Okay, and then short range goals are things like, okay, what's short range? In my opinion, short range is anything between 3 to 6 months. Okay, and I go into a lot of detail about this one-on-one and in sessions I run. For 1 to 3 months is a really good time for you to assess how you're tracking and try and overcome some challenges if you fall into some things like that. And then obviously you need some daily tasks. And for me, daily tasks should be connected to your habits. So that's how that basically works. Okay. Then look at things like your resource identification. And this is things I was talking about before. You need to take almost like an inventory of your capital assets. What are the things that you bring to the table in your startup? What are the things that you bring to the table this year that you can maybe use and utilize to help you in your business? So I came up with about 9 things that I think are good resources to take stock of that could potentially help you with your goals, because now you've set up your goals around, let's just say, financial, and you want to get a business that's running $100,000 a year or $100,000 extra in this next 12 months. So you need to look at, okay, what's your financial situation right now? Do you have resources that can maybe go towards things like marketing, strategy, employing a mentor, staff, whatever it is? What's your financial situation? And look at the resources there. And this could also be potential resources that you can access from other places. Number 2, and I talked about it earlier, is why I said it's important to set a physical goal. I really think that's a resource, because you can set all the goals that you like, but if you can't get up in the morning to go and do business, you're not going to go very far. So physical is very important. Number 3 is material. What materials do you actually have in stock, or what materials do you think you need that can help you get there? Sometimes it could be anything from, flyers, promoting if you're in the product business like I am also, packaging, stuff like that. I need to get some materials in a certain way for me to be able to deliver the service more. Number 4 is talent. This is, in my opinion, we're talking about natural talent. What are the talents that you actually currently have that you can utilize to help your business grow? Number 5 is network. One of my rules is like your network is your network, guys. Maybe you can start exploring your network and seeing who can help you, where can you get assistance from, who knows someone that can maybe be your next contract. Okay. Number 6 is intellectual. Intellectual could be maybe you have some inside information, some IP, or someone that has some IP that you can leverage for your business. Now, I put this as the next one, which is your mentor and your coach. I think this is a very, very important resource, because sometimes for me, it's not necessarily that my coaches or my mentors know more than me about my business, but it's just that they give me a different perspective, and or they have, let's just say, 10 years, 15 years in the industry, or been in business longer than I have. So they can really help me avoid making some mistakes that will cost me both time and money. Number 6 is my own personal experience. Okay, so what experiences have I had in different industries, businesses, jobs, services, wherever, that you can transfer and put back into your business. And then obviously the obvious one there is capital assets. Do you have land? Do you have phones, shoes? What can you sell if need be to leverage that to basically invest back into your business? Okay, these are very, very important things because I find you can set some goals, but if you don't have a connection or correlation with the components that are needed to make that goal happen, like coaches or experience or assets or financial, you don't have a strategy around that, chances are you're shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, then the last strategy here is sacrifice. Now, because we're doing startup consulting and this is a startup webinar, I think it's very, very important to be very honest with each other and ask yourself this question: is there anything worthwhile that you've had to do that didn't actually require resources? And the answer is no. It could have been your time, could have been your money, could have been your attention, could have been your commitment, could have been anything. Any of those things are a risk, and therefore it's a sacrifice. Now, some people have a negative connotation towards this, and I won't preach too much about sacrifice, but it's really worthy that you check it up in the dictionary, because what I have found is that you're always constantly dealing with this thing called risk reward. Okay, for everything that you need to do in life that is worthy of your time, there's always a risk component attached to it, and in the risk is the sacrifice. So here's an example. If you want to make $1 million in a business, chances are you're probably going to invest about $1 million worth of risk in time, resources, thought, dealing with conflict, challenges. The list is endless. So, Sandeepa said this, which I love so much. He said that your success will be defined by what you've sacrificed in order to get it. It is so true. I don't know anybody in my whole life. I've been coaching for a long time now. I've come across so many successful entrepreneurs, millionaires, billionaires, and each one have asked this question: have you had to make some sacrifices to get to and become the person you are? And every single one says absolutely. Now, are there people who are, in the off chance outside that rule? The answer is I'm sure they are, but the fact is I don't relate to them. And in my opinion, if someone says, well, I got to the top and, I just sat down on the top of a mountain to open my chakras and then all the money's been pouring in ever since, it's effortless. Chances are I think they're lying, because that's just not how the world works. And if it does, I think it works for a very, very small percentage of people. But the majority of us have had to be very clear and honest about what we've had to sacrifice to get there. Perfect example, again, is, let's just say you want to get fitter and get a six-pack. You got to go to the gym. Now, is the gym always fun? People go, yeah, it's fun, I enjoy it, the pain is good. It's because they've conditioned themselves to think that way. But chances are, if you're a normal person like anyone of us is, it's a lot of pain. Okay, so similarly, just understand the sacrifice. Okay, then in the last section here, I wanted to talk about, or second last section anyway, is that there's a big difference between goals and wishes. As you can see, this guy here has just crossed his fingers, closed his eyes, and he's hoping that he's going to get his startup successful. That's not how it works, guys. Success in business, particularly, is a science. There's just certain things you need to know. This is why I run these webinars also for you guys. I make them free as much as possible. Or actually, not even as much as possible. They're completely free for you to join into the live webinars. But the reason is because this information, even though it's free, it's usually not appreciated by people, because a lot of people still want to go and subscribe to this wish game. You can't wish yourself upstream. Everything in business and in life in general have what we call the undisputable laws of physics. There are certain things like risk reward applies. So the most intelligent thing I think to do is stack up things in your favor. I'll talk about it in one sentence. This is the definition of what a goal is. A goal is the objective of a person's ambition or effort. These are the two words, ambition or effort, in the aim or desire for a desired result. Okay? Now, that alone is really nice, because effort is one thing and you should put in effort in anything you do. However, if you don't have a resolution, and a resolution comes only from another word called decision. Okay, to do or not to do something. Because if you don't have resolution, you don't actually have the resources, that it takes for you to achieve your goals. So the question you need to ask yourself after you've set some good goals, you've identified in the past what goals you didn't achieve, why you didn't achieve them, the habits behind them, you've gone through all that, you need to ask yourself, now that you've set some cool goals moving on and moving forward, do you have a resolution? Meaning, have you made a decision? How you know you're going to make a decision? It's going to have two ingredients. Number one, it's going to be followed by massive and immediate action. Okay? Not tomorrow, not waiting for next week. If you wait for next week, chances are it wasn't a decision, it wasn't a result. It was just a pretty goal to write down. Okay, so how do you maintain the motivation? And this is what I was talking about, because again, when money is running out, and this is why I use this photo here again, and things are getting challenging, people start thinking about quitting. But remember what we talked about. You need to keep the growth mindset. You need to have a growth mindset which says, okay, might get a bit frustrated here, but I need to keep going, because if you don't keep going, chances are you're not going to achieve your goal. Okay, number two is, I think a lot of people fall into this trap, I certainly have, is there is a big difference between activity and productivity. Let me explain. It's very easy to sit on your computer and say, I've logged in 10 hours. But if I was to stand next to you as your coach and ask you, out of those 10 hours, just today, let's look at today. Today is the 11th of January. Yeah, but whenever it is that you watch this webinar, just think about your last 24 hours, okay? How much time did you spend on Facebook? Now, if Facebook is your industry and you do things in Facebook, no problem, you should jump on. But the fact is, it needs to be connected to results. Meaning, I should get on Facebook and do what it takes for me to get a new client that pays me cash for my business to keep running. Okay. Now, if I'm just on Facebook, putting a pretty picture, putting up a little post, blog, or creating a little quote of the day, getting a like here and there, that's not productive. That's just activity, because it's getting a like, but it doesn't ensure a sale. Because in business, if you don't have a sale and you don't get revenue in, chances are you're not productive. Okay. So you need to really start assessing yourself and follow yourself around for the next 24 hours and ask yourself a question. Is this just an activity, or is this actually leading to self? And the answer is, you find 80% of the time we major in minor things. Think about that. That's a very, very powerful thing. So I'll say it again. 80% of the time we tend to major in minor things. Okay. But if you're going to be successful in business, if you're going to stay motivated to achieve your goals, you need to major in major things, which means you take your goals and then you look for activities that need to happen that will result in something actually being produced. Okay. Number three is, you need to obviously take more responsibility. Okay. By far, if not 100% of the time when I meet someone, the people I know that are the most successful in their startups are people that tend to take responsibility, not just for their successes, but also for their failures. And then I find, just after a few conversations with someone, so how are you going in business? What happened? Oh, I didn't work out. Why? After they go, oh, my sister, my dog, the government, the GFC, the market, this or that. Any answer that does not include themselves as the person responsible, chances are they're not going to be successful in startup. And more successful people can pick it up just in your language. So you need to ask yourself again, do you have a growth mindset, and are you accepting of your responsibilities for failure? It's a very, very important point. Okay, so let's just have a recap. Number one is, in my opinion, sorry, I'll go back a bit. There's a lot of things that you can do in business. There's a lot of goals that you can set. Okay, but my late mentor, Jim Rohn, said it this way. Everything, I hope you can hear me very well here, whenever you listen to this webinar, everything that you want to change from now, if you're looking back from last year to this year, everything that you want to change can change if you can change yourself. Okay, I'll say that again. Nothing in the world ever changes unless you change. So a lot of what you hear with my content, and a lot of what I'm going to be focusing on, particularly moving forward with the Startup University, is just like, how do we inspire, motivate, enable, equip the individual to change? Because once you change the way you think, this isn't as simple as your mindset, chances are everything's going to change. But one thing you can't change is your ex-wife, your boyfriend, mother, dog, government, economy. That's just going to do what it's going to do. We call it season. But you as an individual can change. So I hope that really inspires you to really think about that. So here's a couple of recaps on goals. Goals are not goals if they don't have a time frame. In my opinion, they need a number. They need to have a number or something numeric or a time frame for you to be able to count. Number two, there are 7 ways for you to ensure your goals. And again, remember, not only actions. It's not just about taking action. It's also about some of those other steps we talked about at the beginning, taking stock, reflecting, really thinking about the things that you've been doing in the past years that led you to where you are. Because if you can't see those patterns, you're going to basically keep doing them over and over again. And that's the definition of insanity, as Albert Einstein said. Okay. Number 3, a goal without resolution is useless. Nice to set goals, and we set some goals, but guys, the biggest factor at the end of this webinar, biggest factor at the end of this call, and the biggest factor that's going to determine your success and failure at the end of any year is your decision to take action on it. If you do not take action on those goals, chances are they're not even goals. Okay. Number 4, take responsibility for your results and learn the difference between temporary defeat and failure. Remember, we talked about the growth mindset. Okay. There is a difference between going after a hurdle, being a bit frustrated. That's all normal. That will happen to all of us. Actually, I would say 80% of the time. But the people that are successful have what my coach says I have. It's really funny when I heard it, but I quite like it. He says, Aaron, I think you suffer from some sort of selective temporary amnesia. I found that so funny, but it's true in so many ways because, guys, just last year, the year gone, I have achieved phenomenal results. But if I'm really, really honest, if I was to sit down, which I won't do, but if I was to sit down and jot down the failures that happened last year, my goodness, I think there would be 80%. Okay. So the fact is, I've found not just for myself, but most successful people get up and get moving much quicker and get over their temporary defeats much quicker because they don't sit on them. They just treat them exactly that. They're just temporary defeats. But failure, guys, is permanent. So never, ever fail, but really get excited about temporary defeats because it's just like we talked about in the growth mindset, an opportunity for you to adjust and pivot and take a new direction because what you're doing is just a wake-up call that it wasn't working. Okay? So I'd like to finish up on this. Your dream doesn't have an expiry date. So just take a deep breath and try again. This is one of the biggest elements for entrepreneurs is you just need to keep going. You just need to keep trying because yes, we set some dates and those dates are intentions. They're goals, but they're intentions. Meaning if by the end of the year, you set some big goals and you didn't achieve them, you need to go back over those 7 processes that I asked. Did you set it too big? Did you have the right habits? Did you have mentorship? Were you open to the different resources available for you to achieve them? If the answers are not yes to most of those questions, which it is for most people, just take a deep breath, reset that goal, and try again. Okay? Because it's not the end of the world. It's just you weren't as prepared as you should have been. Okay? So I hope that inspires you. So for next session that we're going to be running next month, we're going to talk about this thing called actionable business plans. I'm really, really excited to share this with you because I'm finding that if you've been to any of my talks or webinars, I always say this, I don't believe in business plans. People go, what do you mean you have a business? How does that work? No, business plans have a function. If you're going to write a 20-page, 50-page, 80-page business plan for a banker and you need investment money, sure, then you get a business plan. But then that in most cases is not a startup phase. Okay. In most cases, what you need is an actionable business plan. And what that is, or actionable business planning, is just something very simple, applicable, easy to follow, and you can basically review it every day. I have one, I'll share a couple of samples maybe in the next webinar, but it's very, very important for us to know the difference because I find a lot of people have business plans, but they don't actually read them. So if you have one, ask yourself the question, when was the last time you read it? And if it wasn't anytime soon, because of all those pages, chances are it's not actionable, right? So look at that. So what I'd like to do now, and we're just near the end of the hour, is I'd like to really personally, if you've got any value and this resonated with you, I really hope that you can join us because we started up a Startup Builder Tribe, which is just a community page on Facebook. It's free to join. You just need to send us an invite and we'll let you join. But what that does is it just gives you updates to when we're running the webinars. We also write a couple of free cool stuff. But most importantly, is it's just a community where you can share some of the lessons that you've learned from this webinar, maybe the things you were challenged, or like I said, you had any questions for me. I will make my time to go to these webinar places and you can say, look, we had a talk on such and such. These things you expanded on. Could you please elaborate or send some information? Secondly, I have a lot of cool tools that we use that to help entrepreneurs. So I'll be basically posting some of those links on the community page. So I hope you can join us. It's absolutely free. And the advantage of doing that is you get access to know when we're running our next topic, what the next topic is, and also if you want to invite friends and family to join, you feel most welcome to do that. So each talk goes for 60 minutes. Since we started this last year, we have never missed a webinar. So I intend to keep that promise to you guys every month. So what I'm looking at are these are the next few topics to come. And I hope we have 12 over 12 months of webinar content for you. So please join the Startup Builder Tribe. If you've got any questions, email operations@lotprofit.com. Like I said, for the tribe, you basically get free access to the live webinars like today. But obviously, if you're hearing this and it's already downloaded, then you pay only $9.99, and you get the download. But when you send an email to operations, it can give you a shopping list of all the topics that we have, and you can basically download them, listen to them over and over again, because repetition is the mother of learning. And then next, you just get access to tools. Like I said, there's so many tools. Like you can see, there's a business model canvas. There's tools on questionnaires I have for the ultimate questionnaires all startups I think should ask themselves. I got planners, actionable business plans like I talked about. Just so many things that I come up with that work in my business because, like I said, I own a conventional business. And whatever tools work for me, I basically share them with you guys. So hope you've really enjoyed today's webinar. I'd like to say thank you very, very much for joining us, and looking forward to sharing with you again at the beginning of next month. Thanks for now, and have a good day.